You know, I've been asked our theme music, and it's not from any particular program you may think it is. We found it languishing in a shelter. It was, one of those like animal rescues, but this is for theme music. It's called Compensating for Something. I don't know why it's called that at all either. Thank you for joining us this week on the Afternoon Constitutional. And, of course, thanks to our friends right down here at govoversight.org. That is the Government Accountability and Oversight Group. Our favorite four-letter word is FOIA. And I know somebody else whose favorite four-letter word is FOIA. He is John Whitehead of the Rutherford Institute, great constitutional crusader. I know you are a lawyer, but crusader just sounds so much cooler on a masthead of a book. Author of several great books, including Battlefield America, as well as Nation of Wolves. John, it's good to see you again. How are you doing today?
Doing fine. Just really busy with our work and really concerned about the future of this nation. It doesn't look good.
Well, and we're going to take personality out for this, out for a walk on this a little bit here, because there are things, and in the real hard part about America, I think you and I have agreed on this, the real hard part of America is looking at the Bill of Rights and understanding that they count for people that, whether you like them, dislike them, agree with them, going to vote for them, or whatever it may be, and our protections for privacy and for government overreach have always been at the center square of what you at the Rutherford Institute have been doing, John. So amidst all of this about classified documents, even Mark Warner and I have found common ground on the fact that the government is overly classified these days. The lunch menu at the White House is a classified document, for example. Yeah. So talk about this classification nation that we've become, because I think it is in its essence to hide government activity from the citizens. Sometimes it's just because it's easier just to say, make it classified. But sometimes it's untoward efforts as well.
Well, the Constitution starts out with those words: "We the people do ordain and establish this Constitution." The people who gave us this country we have, the so-called founding fathers, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, you go down the list, John Adams, James Madison, who wrote our Bill of Rights, we are the government. And these people in D.C. are running the federal government, or our state governments or local governments supposedly represent us, but they do not. And they don't want you knowing basically what they're doing. It's a very corrupt regime in Washington, D.C. I've sued in and out of Washington, D.C. for 40 years, and I've always been, I'm surprised now when I see things happening that they're still so crooked in Washington, D.C. And the thing is, they do not want the American people to know what they're doing, how they're spending money. I mean, when I found out just recently that over $1 billion was sent to Russia and China, organizations, but we don't vote on any of that. I mean, we're sending money all over the world to different groups and stuff, and it's a little scary when you think about how they're spending our money. And basically what we have is a dictatorship disguised as a democracy, and we believe it because we're not informed. Mm-hmm. But you're right, they do not. They want a very secretive government. They always have, and as long as they're hiding things, and it all comes out of that concept that was leaked by the FBI in 2015, when they said that there was a seventh floor group, basically, that ran the country. And what came out of that was the term deep state. Mm-hmm. But there have been some studies that have shown this, that there was a really key study that came out of Princeton and Northwestern University 6 or 7 years ago, where they studied where money congregated in America, and it was Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And the professors there at the two universities came to the conclusion that we are ruled by approximately 585 billionaires, who get whatever they want. And they actually said this, the professors, when the American people want something, they lose. They don't get it. So they don't want you knowing all this. They want you to think that you're living in a representative government where they're taking care of you, but it's really run by, well, listen, my book, Battlefield America, I show you that's how Nazi Germany developed. It developed corporations. Right. There was a key meeting of all these corporations, and they came out, and one of the journalists asked them, what did you decide? And they said, we've hired Hitler. That's an actual quote. They hired Hitler. Yeah. And listen, when you're running for government in the United States, especially national government, like a president, vice president, or whatever, congressman, you got to go for the money. The average congressman someday spends 2 to 3 days a week raising money. I had a good friend who worked for a major magazine, and he went to work for a congressman. He called me about 2 months later and says, John, you're right, but it's actually worse than you think. He says the corporations run everything in this town. We don't have a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Well, it's fake.
And as the regulatory capture then leads to more and more centralization of all the corporations, whether they be medical care, retail, whatever they may be, the more we centralize the government, these corporations, then the more the government becomes just shades of the same gray, because I think it was 2008, there was a report as to how much Lehman Brothers had given to both Barack Obama and John McCain's campaign, just hedging their bet on one of them was going to be president. First, though, I think is the question of how much authority we give the government. And over the last 100 years or so, we've given more and more authority to the government. You said, take care of us. And I know it was just sort of conversational there. But I think a lot of Americans lose our liberty first by thinking that somebody in the government is going to take care of things for us. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, but the government's not going to take care of you. You got to take care of yourself. I keep telling the people. That's one thing you talked about. They don't want us really thinking and stuff and all what's going on. They don't want critical thinking. That's why they're doing totally away with free speech today. They don't want you being able to disagree with anything, any certain groups or things the government is advocating. But critical thinking is the key to a democracy, if you want to call it that. And that is the right to challenge someone who's saying something on the media, out speaking out anywhere, and challenging them peacefully, because the First Amendment gives you the right to peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. Like I say, here's the crazy thing: when I talk to most people today, I said, "Can you give me the freedoms in the First Amendment?" And they look at me kind of like, freedom of religion. I go, well, they're a little more than that, buddy.
Yeah.
So, and James Madison, the local man in Charlottesville, who wrote the Bill of Rights, clearly said this. This is a great what he says: we ought to mistrust all those in power. Well, why did he say that? Because he saw corruption. It's from the beginning of time, from Rome all the way up to governments today. They're corrupt. They do. We allow that, though. The American people allow it by sitting on their butts and not doing anything about it.
Well, you mentioned Rome, and there's some wonderful scholarly work that will detail all of the things. And if you read all of the things that went on as Caesar took power and kept the Senate, and the Senate was really just there to make the citizens feel like the normal republic was still in place when Caesar ruled dictatorially, and then for 300 years after that, dictators continued to come along with fewer and fewer rights for the people, and the poverty grew and grew and grew. John Whitehead from the Rutherford Institute is on with us. So one of the rights, and this is a relatively new right of the citizen to find out what the government was doing. After Watergate, the laws were written regarding freedom of information requests, both by journalists but also by civilians as well. Is that really kind of that flashpoint when we start to see this classification mania beginning in Washington, so that even if you FOIA something, they can turn around and say, well, no, you can't see that, it's classified. I mean, they're doing it to members of Congress.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it. If you live in a free government, we should be able to go up to D.C. or get online and see what they're doing. We got to know. But they don't want us to know. They want a people. And, Hitler said it best. He says, the key to good leadership is the sleepwalking people. Okay. And that is what they want today. And they have it, basically. I talk to people today. They don't seem to be, they walk away when you talk about freedom, getting out and doing assembly, taking over your local governments, which I'm telling them to do. Hey, what does the 10th Amendment say to most people? They look at me and go, it says that local governments can nullify acts of the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a lot of power. So get the federal government, the local government should be keep your armed agents out of our country. Here's the crazy thing about it, though. We're in a state of martial law right now. I keep telling people there are over 200,000 federal agents running around with hollow point bullets. I'm a former infantry officer. We couldn't use hollow point bullets because they were considered inhuman. But we have them now, our agents. And Gibby, I got the facts here. I'm just going to look at it real quick. The IRS has stockpiled, listen to this, 4,500 guns and 5 million rounds of information, of ammunition.
Jeez.
The Veterans Administration has
VA.
11 million rounds of ammo. The Department of Health and Human Services has 4 million rounds of ammo.
What?
Listen to this. The Social Security Administration has 800 rounds of ammunition for their special agents. This is the crazy one. The Environmental Protection Agency has over 600 guns and 620 armed special agents. 620,000.
I mean, the last two are stunning, John.
Listen to this. Amtrak, listen, this is the crazy thing. Amtrak and the NASA now, which shoots the rockets up in outer space, they have SWAT teams. And I'm going, are they flying to another planet to do SWAT teams? Or are they going to do the SWAT teams here? But see, there was a 2030 video that came out that the Pentagon developed for training for their agents and police, by the way. About 4 or 5 years ago, it predicted by 2030 the country's going to collapse. And it looks like we're probably headed in that direction in some forms, where they're going to institute martial law. They're getting ready. They're training for it. They're having training camps all around the country. They have underground facilities, by the way. Look up, listen, the Washington Post revealed that there's a place called Mount Weather right outside of Washington, D.C., that has underground shopping centers and all these things, an office of the presidency, where the government will take over at times of nuclear attack or distress. And there are other underground facilities across the United States. The question is, wait a second. We're the people. They should be protecting us. They're going to go hide underground in times of distress?
Well, and part of it is I feel like they're playing into it when they start setting people at each other politically, and if you are aligned with them, why you're messing with and I've said this, if the economic collapse comes, if people think we're at each other's throats today, when the Weimar Republic settles in, since we're kind of doing this Germany 33 reunion here, and maybe 90 years is the cycle where people forget and they start doing things all over again. But when that economy crashes, the pitchforks and torches are going to be the least of our problems. The society is going to tear itself apart, and that will give them the authority to come in and declare martial law, John.
And like I'll say, we're already under martial law. That's the point. They're already armed. They're roaming the streets. Local policemen work with them. They're trained. FBI trains many of the police chiefs. And that's one thing I think local government should be local governments. I don't think the federal government should be involved in our local government. Mm-hmm. Get them out of your government. And that's why I'm telling people, get together and start your little civil liberties oversight committees. Start picketing. They hate picketing, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
If you do it peacefully. They want you to get violent, because that's when they can smash your head and CNN or whatever will go on. These are a bunch of idiots. Yeah. Let's smash them. Yeah. So there are things you can do to change this thing. One is start thinking. The average American watches 150 hours of screen devices a month. I'm saying, hey, cut back on that stuff, because Bernstein and Woodward, Carl Bernstein, who worked with Woodward in exposing Nixon and the Watergate scandal, when he started working with national media, he went, whoa, he wrote a really good article saying they're controlled by the government. The government sits in their offices, vets articles, edits things. Mm-hmm. So I'm warning people, when you're watching the news, if you believe it and that's critical thinking, if you believe it without questioning some of the things they're telling you, you're a program entity. And what do they do to program entities? Whatever they want to do. They'll kick you in the head when it's time. And we need to, if you care for your children, your grandchildren, folks, start getting active in your government. That's the key to freedom in the country.
John Whitehead on with us, Rutherford.org. John, I've said to people in the past, what's happened to us over the last 50 years or so is we've grown attached to the trappings of liberty. We had a free society, we had a capitalist society that created great wealth, and then we fell in love with the stuff that it created, and we exchanged a pyrrhic threat of losing those things with the liberty that helped create them. And that is the biggest problem. Is people need to realize. I draw a comparison because sometimes I try to oversimplify things. So it's like when the Grinch stole all of the Christmas trappings from Whoville. The Who's still came out and celebrated Christmas because it wasn't the trappings at all. Our liberty is not our automobiles, is not our cable TV. Those things are fruits of it, and we have to remember, those things without getting turned on each other. John, does that make any sense?
Of course it does. And again, you mentioned Rome. It's very similar to what happened in Rome. And I mean, there are a number of authors, a guy named Edward Gibbons, who wrote a really good analysis of a historian on what happened in Rome. And he went through, we're following all the things. The people are just becoming servants. They're not getting out here and getting active. They're getting entertained. I keep telling people at a certain point, entertainment becomes slavery. George Orwell in his book 1984 said it really well. He says, beer, sports, etc., keep the people under control. And that's what happens. That's what's happening in America.
I believe it was called bread and circuses back in the day. And everyone's happy and everyone thinks everything is going along great until it collapses. And I believe, the economy is going to be the first thing that collapses with this. So people need to be prepared for that. And I'm not talking about hoarding or being greedy, but I mean, we need things that are going to keep it intrinsic value if the dollar does not, John. Is that also fair?
Oh, yeah. And the thing I tell people, listen, if 80,000 SWAT team raids occur in America annually, where police are going through doors, smashing down doors, many times without warrants, and if they think this is a free country, folks, it's so similar, like I say in my book, Battlefield America, to what happened in Nazi Germany. And people forget that the FBI in the late 1930s was fascinated with Hitler. They sent agents over to study how his secret police worked. That's why you got the McCarthy era in the 1950s, where they were showing up at people's doors and investigating people like Frank Sinatra. You go down the list, celebrities and other people who just said something in public that the government thought might be threatening to their power.
Well, and we remember, Jefferson ran for president in 1800 because he had started to watch John Adams signing alien and sedition acts, and he was looking at things that were being considered un-American activities were ripped right from the usurpations and abuses section of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, and that's how very quickly it happened, John, that the authoritarian state took over, and they boogeyman. And I think after the Civil War, a lot of the centralized government took hold because they pointed to what I refer to as the Knights in White Satin, the Klan. The Jim Crow 1.0, and they pointed at that and said, you need us to protect you from this. Well, we're going sort of through the same thing again, and you bring up Germany. They had to pick an enemy. They pointed it to the German people, said, these are the people that are causing your distress, so we're going to round them up. And then you'll be better. But that they were allowed to then, I listened to people talking about moms and dads being put on FBI lists because they speak out at school board meetings. That's what I feel like we're pointing out one group of people, and we're going to say we're going to round them up, and then everything will be fine. But you're going to need to give up some of your liberties while we do that.
Well, most people don't realize the government has a database called Main Core, which has about 10 million names on it, which they say these people will be rounded up in times of distress. They're already, like I say, we're really copying the former regimes right now. People don't realize it because they're not educated. And I keep saying education precedes action. Get educated. There are good websites like ours at Rutherford.org, programs like this. Get your knowledge, folks, I'm saying, and get out there and get active in your local government. If you're just going to sit, like I say, and watch screen devices. And today when I go in restaurants and I see 3 kids and 2 parents are all staring at their cell phones.
Yeah.
They're not even talking anymore. But you realize all that knowledge, the major corporations like Amazon, Meta now, all those things that run things, Facebook, they work with the government. They maintain the intelligence clouds for all 17 intelligence agencies. So they work with the federal government in watching everything we're doing. We're in a total surveillance state. Everything is listening to you and watching you now. Drones now are flying over meetings and without warrants. with facial recognition software and recording who's at these meetings.
Well,
So
and
they
we
can
also watch. I
lives.
mean, Elon Musk admitted, he said when he took over Twitter, there was FBI algorithms that were managing your news feeds in the same way the Chinese Communist Party is doing to
Yep.
the TikTok feeds. And our intelligence community, I mentioned Mark Warner, all he does when I bring that up is tell me how much he dislikes Elon Musk. And it's, again, take the personality out of it, and then you can have an honest conversation. John, I so appreciate your time. FOIA is very important. People are going to tell you things like, oh, that's a personnel matter, or oh, that's classified, but you have to keep pushing. And groups like John's and ours here at the Government Accountability and Oversight, we keep pushing for more transparency in government. Bless you, sir, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Good work.
Rutherford.org is his website as well. And thank you for joining us here on the Afternoon Constitutional. Until tomorrow, for all of us, govoversight.org. So long, and thanks for all the fish.